Good afternoon. So this is Rundlii Gaming again. We will be going over another deck. This will be going over kind of a weird concept of a deck, and so most of the time, not a lot of people are going to take this particular deck serious until it starts going. I basically took a few cards and I was trying to find the best way to break that particular card. So this is kind of my version of that. So it's a little bit different from like your normal types of decks, but just a neat little concept that I had. So the goal of this deck was to... So we have a few different things here. The first being, the deck is built around the Stern Judge and Karma. Now, Stern Judge and Karma by themselves are kind of bad, but they can be useful if you can find a means of modifying them quite a bit. Let's go ahead and find Karma. Anyone that's not familiar with Karma, what Karma does is that it deals so during each player's upkeep, Karma deals to that player an amount of damage equal to the number of swamps he or she controls. Which, if you're playing, say, a green elf deck, it's not going to be a very big deal. They're just going to look at it and say, well, I don't have swamps, so it doesn't actually matter. And so for the most part, they're probably just going to leave you alone because it's not a big deal. Stern Judge is about the equivalent of that. Basically, he can tap, and then each player loses life for each swamp he or she controls. So again, it's going to look kind of awkward if you're playing one-on-one versus an elf deck, or simply because they have like forest in play and not any swamps, this is not going to be a factor for them. So they may actually just completely leave you alone for a while. Now, how everything in this deck goes is that we're going to have a few cards that manipulate the situation a bit. Like in this particular case, we have things in here like Mind Bend. Change the text of target permanent by replacing all instances of one color word with another, or one basic land type with another. So we, for 1 mana, can basically switch that text of swamp into, say, forest, which then makes those cards very much a problem for those particular decks. And this is permanent, so whenever you mind bend something, it becomes that permanently. But you do have a few of them, so you can switch those around later if needed. All the other cards in the deck are going to have certain goals that they do. In this case, what I use Gleam of Resistance for is not necessarily the ability, though the ability I have used a few times, just to allow me to untap a Stern Judge and then hit him again for damage. I usually use these for like the land cycling. I found a bunch of cards that gave me certain land cycling so I could pull mana as needed. In this particular case, basically you discard this card, you look for a basic land, you put it in your hand. Freed from the Reel. This basically allows you to machine gun the Stern Judge. So basically, if you put this on a creature, for every blue mana you can untap enchant a creature, or you can tap it. Normally the tap is more so designed so that if you put it on someone else's creature, whenever they untap something, the creature at the beginning of the turn, you can re-tap it for a blue mana. So you could use it offensively. This deck generally uses as a defensive weapon. Because basically every blue mana you have, you can tap and deal damage equal to the number of basic lands they have of a particular type. Because as I said, if they're playing green, and you turn that into forest instead of swamp, every time you tap him, he deals X damage equal to the number of forests that each player controls. Shoreline, again, he is island cycling, so he allows you to search your library for an island and place it in your hand. The Sanctum is a plane cycling and or island cycling. So this allows you to search for either of the two colors that you run in this deck. The Puppeteer is another very similar card. he allows you to tap or untap target creature. Usually early game, I will use him as an offensive. So if they have like a 6/6 creature on their side of the board, I can use this one to tap it down each round until I can basically get my own combo going. The Noble is another very similar card with the plane cycling. I can use these to find me mana, and then in turn be able to keep playing them. Now these creatures that I mentioned that have the island cycle, the plane cycling, they also double as creatures as well, since they can be played as a creature if you need more defenders. Because the deck normally is not going to kill anybody through actual fighting. Normally the goal of the deck is to get like a Stern Judge or a Karma out, switch the color, the text type, and then kill them that way. Now there are some disadvantages, of course. If they are playing a solid white deck, there's a very good chance you may partially just kill yourself in addition. Because if you turn it into planes, you're going to hit yourself with Stern Judge as well. So there are downsides to it, but so that's why I said it's definitely an odd design, and it simply just takes what might be an otherwise useless card and makes it a little bit more powerful. Now, one other good card that you could run in here is things like Angry Mobs, which would give you an offense. I will actually see if I can locate that card real quick. Because it has the same black hate that a lot of the other cards do. Like in this case, during my turn, Angry Mob has power and toughness each equal to 2 plus the number of swamps all opponents control. During other turns, Angry Mob has power and toughness each equal to 2. So for 4 mana, he's a 2/2. However, if I were to change the text to Forest again, and if I were to be playing against an Elf deck, then his power and toughness will be 2 plus the number of forests I have on play, and he has trample. So if he has 6 forests in play, he becomes an 8/8 trample. Which again, this may give you an offensive capability to actually kill other players. Or again, it could be, you could also do it as, planes, or so this would give you the ability to actually kill someone that's running the same colors you are. So if they were running another white deck, you were to declare planes, this one doesn't necessarily kill you. So I mean, that's another possible card that you could drop in here as well. There are a few other things that are like Sleight of Mind that have things like buyback. So these aren't just the only ones, but Blue had actually several. I think there's at least 3 to 4 of those types of cards, if not a few more. So I mean, this is a very basic concept. And as I mentioned with these videos, I'm trying to promote the idea that you don't necessarily need an expensive deck to build something that's at least interesting or fun. I wouldn't label this one necessarily as one of my funner deck, much more fun decks. If you wanted to go through my other videos, I think out of my decks, the Green Bounce one seems to be one of the funner ones, the more enjoyable ones. And then some of the ones I will be posting in the future, hopefully will also be ones that I can kind of mention that I find to be much more enjoyable to play. Now this one may or may not necessarily be enjoyable to play against, but it's more so an interesting concept rather than a fun to play. So I don't usually find this one that fun to play. I mean, you're supposed to just get a Stern Judge or a Karma, change attacks, and then blast them. So I mean, there's not a whole lot to it. This one wins about 50% of the time maybe in casual, because most of the time people don't usually look at me as an enemy, especially in a big multiplayer game. If it's a one-on-one, this one usually does kind of poorly. Unless they're running all of one color and they don't out-aggro me before I can get a combo off. If they do have creature control though, usually my Stern Judge will fall pretty quickly. But usually if they're running, say, a black deck, they can kill my Stern Judge, but they can't deal with Karma. If they can deal with Karma, say with a green deck, they can't really deal with Stern Judge because green doesn't have very much creature control. They have like Beast Within, which will give you a 3/3 creature in response to that. So I mean, there's not a lot of that's what um, I designed the deck to actually do, which is basically have a little bit of versatility. Because you don't want to give yourself every weakness, but it's going to have some things that do beat it a lot quicker. If you are running an aggro deck against this one, most of the time the aggro deck will usually win. If it's a slower deck, this one usually has a good chance of just kind of pulling off a win. In multiplayer, most people just don't deem you as a threat unless they're running black. As soon as you drop a Karma or a Stern Judge, any black deck is going to want you dead. It's usually how it goes. You could maybe try to talk your way out that Stern Judge you're not going to try to tap unless he attacks. But again, if it's in play, you're going to be a target with anyone that's running black mana. So I hope you like the concept of the deck. As I said, it's not anything too overly complicated. It's a very simple and straightforward method of a win con. But again, it's a fairly slow one. But it's just it was something I was trying to build a deck around, and that I thought was just a neat idea anyway. Alright, thank you for watching, and you have